Killer's Day, the goddess of medicine and healing, the lady of divine salvation, mercy, and hangovers, the patient goddess. Her career had at least achieved a sort of notoriety, but Rochelle was still taken aback by the crowd at Orinka Stadium. It was one thing to watch recordings, but what others played at for fun, she lived as a reality. Galaxy Conquest was adept at modelling the ships of the Imperium, as well as those of the Consortium and Alliance, as far as was known. Historical ships from the lower tiers were quite accurate, but she had viewed GC games before and had harboured a low opinion of the game. Not the game itself. The programming and modelling was fine, but no matter how lovingly recreated the ship, victory or defeat came down to how that ship was fought. Battle wasn't a game, and it was blood and screams and funerals, and players threw their ships around with abandon, heedless to the lives of their virtual crews. Their ships were mere game pieces. Having spent years crafting literal war games, the tournament seemed childish. That said, she could admit there were caveats. After a week with her family, her niece's personality certainly shone through, and that was no compliment. Technically competent and determined in her quest for victory, her niece was also vicious. Turned loose in the service, she was the kind of young woman who would garner success, but that kind of officer was a mixed blessing. They held life cheap against their own glory, and an enemy who believed there was no option to surrender would fight with everything they had while crews paid the price. The Navy wasn't a game. It was a profession of arms with rules of conduct. Some you skirted and some you did not, none of which gave her much comfort. Though loath to admit it, her niece was turning into the kind of woman that she and Hara Aharai detested. That said, it was one thing to review the occasional match for amusement, and quite another to be present. While she knew about the Orinka complex, she had never had the occasion to visit, and it did impress. Her own simulations were state-of-the-art, but the stadium and the teeming crows on Killer's Day brought a certain pageantry to it all.
People only see ships flare and die. It's good that there are casualties and lives, or we would be too fond of war.
The tournament's popularity and the presence of her niece were enough to make her accept Hala Aharai's invitation, but the stadium suite was packed with more senior officers than she'd seen at her last state dinner. Women from Admiralty House rubbed shoulder to shoulder with generals from the Blackstone, and it was something of a relief to just sit down. Hara leaned in and whispered,
"Half of these women are purple with envy over you retaining a field command, and would cheerfully promote you back to Admiral just to watch you grit your teeth." "It's the other half that bothers me," Rochelle thought, but said nothing. The crowded room was no place for a candid conversation, and her friend was the superintendent of the Naval Academy this year. As a mere captain, that got her a seat, but as a former fleet admiral, she knew how the games in this room were being played. The true crowns were gone, but some women in this room had been more circumspect in their condemnation than others. They cheered loudly at the time, but it was their attitudes before and after which rankled. But that was history. She banished the thought to focus on the tournament. "So, Tier 10, and my niece plans to field a carrier fleet."
"Your influence, no doubt,"
Hara said wearily. "But yes, state-of-the-art warships, full teams too. The developers at Vite were pretty emphatic about the imbalance and that dropping a handicap was good for the crowd. Everyone wanted to see a fair fight, which is why I've armed the Imperial fleet with that new toy of yours." "The wild weasels?" Rochelle hissed.
A brainchild of Ventures Forth and Milk McDermott, they insisted the system was closer to a ferret, but she and Cookie liked Wild Weasel better. The name scarcely mattered. Their sole field test had been surprisingly effective.
"Those are supposed to be classified."
"Yes, well, 9 out of 10 rumours we leak out are pure nonsense, but the occasional hint of truth keeps our counterparts guessing." Boo Weeps and Booint both thought,
Now was a good time to put the Alliance on the back foot while things are heating up along our border.
Hara shrugged. If it gives you satisfaction, it won't go entirely the Imperial team's way. We're arming your niece with Moonstone-class interceptors instead of the old Malachites, and Boo Weeps is being generous with their suspected stats. If she takes after you, your niece may have a field day.
My niece is far from Sevastotov, or any influence of mine, she replied frostily. I'm just happy to watch and be left alone. I've already had 3 admirals and a general ask about my humans, and if their performance is everything I've reported.
Remember me, Superintendent? I was standing right there, and I see you still don't like being questioned. Although I'll admit, I'd love to see humans play. The professional teams are recruiting on Earth for next year. Hara snorted as she reached into her pocket and tossed a small box on her lap. Oh, that reminds me. I wanted to give you these. Rochelle opened the box and found the pins of a rear admiral.
Here? Really?
She waved her hand to the room.
I thought we were here for the game.
You taught me the value of a good ambush. Hara folded her hands over her lap. This is the one place I knew you couldn't refuse and storm out.
I don't have to refuse. If I remember correctly, my current duties freeze me from a promotion. And I'll also remind you, I have been encouraged to retire once said duties are over.
Oh, thaw out. It's past time you were returned to flag rank again. Hara studied the view of the stadium rather than face her. The Empress mentioned it. Twice. Rochelle was about to protest. But twice? Her brows knit together, but the words died on her lips. Besides, Hara said airily, someone has to be superintendent for the next 3 years, and nobody would accept a mere captain holding the office. As the network's resident Yahtzee, Emick was prepared to entertain her position as a third-string announcer. Her homeworld lay deep in Alliance territory, but while she didn't care for the Imperium, this was where the money was. She was a face the Shuvanti could match to the melange of races comprising the Alliance, and she tried to the best of her ability, though her co-hosts made that just a bit easier this year. Last match's fistfight between Karay and Cassell got the Shuvanti and Nightcrew hosts reassigned to on-the-scene locations in the team rooms, far from the studio and farther from each other. Sector 3, Confront. Map, Open System Assault with Capture. Ship Tier, 10. Team 1, Consortium. Ground Commander, Laser Pump. Fleet Commander, Crash Impact. Team 2, Imperial. Ground Commander, Imperial Houts. Fleet Commander, Obsidian Syndrome. The team stats were up on screen 1, while the other displayed the star system. Standing casually on all fours, she squared her shoulders and fixed on a pearly smile as the broadcast and audio text gave the producer a nod. They were live in 3, 2... Welcome back to Orinka Stadium, she said. I'm Darrow Emick. I'm Larry Carey, came the voice from Hall 1. Maybe it was her gleeful imagination, but the Shuvanti woman sounded less than happy with being banished from the studio.
And I'm Andra Cassell,
came the voice from Hall 2. Cassell was right on cue, but she knew the Nightcrew woman was seething. As another foreigner, Emick had tried to feel sympathy, but there was a time for sympathy and there was a time for the old Alliance proverb. Never take part in a mistake if there was someone else to blame. She'd been shocked by the violence on the set. If both weren't sent away, she was leaving for her own safety. Try and find another Alliance anchor overnight. Welcome back to the exciting finale of this year's Galaxy Conquest match, brought to you by Vite, and the exciting new Dominatrix 20 Game Slab. That's right, Emick, Cassell, is it true all the indentured game developers at Vite are ritually banned?
That's right, Emic. Cassell, is it true all the indentured game developers at Vite are ritually branded with a hot game slab?
Emic stepped back in, trampling hard over the night crew.
That's right. Suck an awful whoos for breaking in on me. Guess who's getting the biggest raise this year, you bitches?
The night crew sputtered.
This evening, Larry and Andra are embedded with the Imperial and Consortium teams. They'll be bringing you live interviews with players as soon as they're killed. And why just imagine the visceral feeling of being there when you can feel it yourself in the new Game Slab 20. Right, Larry? Right. And after tonight's match, players with premium accounts will be able to buy either fully customized marine armor or ship transponders from their favorite players. Corray was too professional to sound wary to the audience, but she took the hint. Oh hey, buy both! Tinted helmets, gold highlights on your afterburners. You can even increase the chest size on your breastplate. Each for a low price of 20 credits. It never hurt to throw the Chauvanti a bone. The producer lived on her nerves, but visibly relaxed as Emic moved on. Just imagine those colours popping out on your screens. 267,000 shades of black. Am I right, Andra? That's right, Emic. Colours so real not even a night crew can tell for sure. Yeah, you two bitches can stay in your holes till I let you out. This is my show tonight. Given the outstanding performance by both teams, the referees from Vite have brought both teams up to full strength for tonight's finals, so the audience will get to enjoy an epic slugfest. And not only that, right, Andra? Would they like to learn more? Would they ever? Abashed for now, the night crew got on board. Vite has opened comm channels between both fleets. You can listen to the action live for the low price of just 10 credits.
Letsy looked over her flotilla. Tier 10 ships. Current models. Their stats were constantly being updated as the game model was refined, but the match was odd. The closed system assault with capture mode was what she'd expected. It was nearly always used for the finals. Closed mode created long fights, and there had been some spectacular turnarounds that made it worthwhile. Even with great players, people still could get stupid or lucky. While rare, reversals of fortune could happen, and the capture mode ensured a ground fight no matter what the fleets did. At least House would be happy. The system was a young star with planets still forming. Other than 2 gas giants, there were only 3 very thick asteroid belts where planets would be someday. Nothing special. Lots of open space, gas clouds, and navigation hazards. But open assault? Why that setting? Both fleets would drop in, turning loose their dropships to burn hard for the target. A fuel station in an L2 orbit around the smaller gas giant. And a fuel depot? By the time the dropships were detected, nobody would be taking wild shots. It was unusual, but the real oddity was the special system loaded on the interceptors. Back at full strength, her team had a solid lineup. 1 heavy carrier, 3 fast battleships, 12... Fleetcom, this is Tickernote, requesting a closed channel. Dead silence fell over the channel, which was just as well. The one boy on their team, Tickernote had drawn their carrier, and he wasn't using a voice synth this round. What was the point? Everyone knew who he was after round 2, and now he wanted to talk to her alone? She could practically feel every woman on the team listening in as... Gara amti waka snoo snoo vak, snarled Admiral Wedgie. The Rikiri player still refused to use a translator. The tone in her voice didn't need one. Bok, bok, bok! Wedgie says get on with it. Wardrobe 99 broke in. Mostly. Hey, you can't... Get on with it. The voice was Kamara's. It's just a get on with it! Chorus most of the team. Deeps. Probably all of them. Fine. I am not blushing.
I am not blushing. Fleet come to Tickanote. Drop down to room 2.
Let's see flipped the channel rather than listen. She could only guess, and that was bad enough.
Tickanote?
He was playing their carrier, probably just asking for specific instructions.
I'm here. Sorry about asking like that. Not a problem. I'm just glad to have you back for the finals. What can I do for you? I wanted to apologize. I should say it to your face outside the pod, but it's easier this way. But I mean it just as much, right?
Letzi bit her lip, unsure of what to say.
Alright. It's hard being a guy playing GC. Most women either try stupid come-ons or think I'm stupid, so I stick with the gender filter. But you... Well, I was a little upset over being killed last round, but you've been really decent. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call. Thanks. I mean it.
She knew she was flushed with embarrassment, but it did mean a lot. Sacrificing Tickano's battleship would have gone terribly wrong if he hadn't nailed the enemy, ramming the capital ship with devastating effect.
That means a lot, and I'm glad you're back for the finals.
Yeah, we'll kick butt.
It sounded like he was enjoying himself. Okay, what do I say now? After all this is done, I was wondering if you're free tomorrow. Maybe we could catch some of the festival together? No, oh, well, I have a wedding to attend. A wedding to attend. Tomorrow. Not mine. Oh, sweet goddess, thank you for this not being in public. I would die. What about the day after? I'm free, if you're free. I'm totally free. I mean available. Are you?
She buried her head in her hands.
Oh, goddess, I'm babbling. Can we maybe just talk about killing people while Niosa's day, Okay, that works. But no tricks, right? No, honest. Stop it. I promise, no tricks. I would love to meet up with you on Niosa's day.
All right. It's a date, Tickano said, sounding satisfied.
You're cute. Now, let's go back to killing people.
Tom settled back on the couch with Miv on his right and Solani on his left, while Shalea grabbed everyone drinks. And 10 credits doesn't seem like a rip-off to you? He asked Lani. She was the expert.
Beats me. They've never done open comms before, but I'm definitely kitting out my Marine Navy with those stripes.
Solani enthused. Tom caught Shalea's eye when she winked. It was good to see Lani out of her shell. Alright. Still seems a bit steep, but I've paid for worse. They don't know the audience is listening, do they? Tom settled in by his ladies and rubbed his chin. And what does bork 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 mean in Rikiri? I'm pretty sure it's not the same as in Muppet.
Tom, never ever say that in public.
Miv nudged him firmly in the ribs.
Particularly around the girls. You're a professor, for goddess's sake. You mean you don't know?
Solani's Cheshire grin made him blush.
Really? Solani, please.
Miv rolled her eyes.
Don't encourage him.
Lani leaned in, and the tip of her tongue tickled his neck.
Wait till our wedding night, she whispered. I'll show you. Get your head in the game, Caslin giggled.
At least she knew it was Caslin. She'd checked the ID. The twins had corralled her into another sidebar as soon as she returned to group chat.
But I have a date. It's important. I never get dates. Who would I have a date with? I have a date. You'll have a much better date if we win, Kamara insisted. So yes, get your head in the game. Look, this woman, Crash Impact. You know her, right?
The memory was enough to jolt her back to reality.
Thanks. Way to throw a bucket of cold water over my day. Yes, I know her. Great stats, and all of it backed up by pure spite. Fine, so let's drop back to Maine, now you're thinking straight. She has a date. Shut up, Lynn.
But that was half an hour ago. And Caslin had been right.
She knew her opponent. Crash Impact was a brute force player, and while wiping the dropships would normally be her style, the parameters for the match mostly precluded doing that. Not that Impact wouldn't try, unless... The game was still at 10 times speed, and wouldn't drop into normal time until someone's sensors registered contact. There should be time. This is Fleetcom. Let's See was already pulling up the system map, and began laying out rendezvous points. Course changes coming from my board. Destroyers, I want you to burn hard for the asteroid field closest to the station in 2 wide groups at marks 1 and 3. Tick a note, split your interceptors into thirds, covering both destroyer groups and the dropships. We're going to see what our new toy can do. She isn't covering her dropships. Lani crossed her arms, which pushed up her chest. It was a good chest, and he was looking forward to seeing more of it. Sure, Leo was well endowed, and Miv was just racktastic. But Tom knew himself. A moment's guilt stole over him, and he glanced over at Miv. She'd noticed his gaze and was looking distinctly smug. The Beach Boys crooned in the back of his mind. Wish they all could be Giovanni girls. Alright, that wasn't fair, but the lack of jealousy was nice. Well, lack of the same kind of jealousy. If Miv and Leia hadn't given their approval, there would have been one hell of a fight. Lani would have lost too. With Giovanni, noble/wife would have beaten Death's Head/suitor for the win. And isn't that a scenario I'm happy as hell to avoid? It will all be over tomorrow. A nice little ceremony, Giovanni style. Jama said it was all in hand. Lani would get her surgery about a week after school was in session. Things will work out. The Tau would provide. Just roll with it. Alright, so she isn't covering the dropships. The consortium is on the far side of the system and was... Tom frowned as the deployment began to spread out. Damn, their whole fleet is nothing but carriers. And are their interceptors supposed to be that fast? At best speed, the consortium ship should be 10 light seconds out. There was always a time delay for light speed, but 10 seconds wasn't horrible. Her destroyers were 3 seconds out, along both flanks of her main group. Worst case, she should pick up the consortium interceptors at 4 light seconds. Bitch or not, Impact was good. She'd had a knack for keeping their detection range in sync with her fleet. If Impact's timing was good, they'd all show up at once. Which meant it was time to play the player. Let's See reached down and opened the channel. Imperial Fleet Consortium ships, you have entered an Imperial system. Respond. Okay, it was pure roleplay and she hadn't detected Impact's fleet, but the crowd would love it. And Impact always hated roleplay. 3 seconds to her destroyers, and a 3-second delay on her feed. Comms would race out and a reply should arrive right about... Pah! Hello there, Obsidian! Yeah, that was her. Are you lost, little gal? Did you wander into Big Match by mistake? Some people never change. Let's see, keyed her mic. Obsidian is good, but you'd remember me better as Entry Burn. Sure, she dropped out of playing GC for a while, but she kept a few friends. According to them, giving Impact the fingers and leaving had seriously pissed her off. Lightspeed was its own rating, though if she could measure the delay on the replies and track the mass detection, then... I wondered if you'd come crawling back after you fizzled out. Burn! Ha! She'd never met the woman, but the disdain in her voice was still the same. Running away like a coward. Are you still crying over parents when you think no one is listening? Alright, that was low. You did not go into personal info in a match, but it was Crash Impact. What else did she really expect? And okay, so maybe not everyone kept their mouths shut. Fuck it, I put my parents behind me. Still, as long as Impact put it out there. Hey, at least my co-mother isn't also my sister, she said cheerily. letting the barb sink in. How is life away from Sevastopol anyway? The seconds ticked past. 4, 3, 2... I will turn your fleet into floating scrap. Give up now and I will only use your ships as garbage scows. Yeah, I've got a retention, but maybe not all of it. Lexi keyed her mic and smiled. You know, scraping you off was the best thing I ever did. How about you give up, and I'll let you and your packs of fake cave troglodytes live? 3, 2... You think I don't remember how you fight? Why not go... She didn't bother waiting for the end of the rant. Yeah, fuck you. Give up now, or piss me off and I'll feed you to my sister as leftovers. Content to let impact sieve, she shut off the channel. With time on her hands, she glanced down at the timestamp. That isn't right. Rochelle felt one eyebrow climbing higher, while Hara wiped away tears of laughter. Oh, goddess! I think I like this girl. You would, she replied tartly. After all, she was from Sevastopol. There were matters of pride. Extend a scholarship. She steepled her fingers. If you're forcing the job on me, then I want to enjoy her. Oh yeah? Hara sniggered. Gara amtiwaka snoostu vak. Dignity of the rank? Really, Hara? That's obscene. She could imagine her niece at the moment, but thanks to the live feed, she didn't have to. Bork, 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 she murmured. Hey, Glock! Emick blurted, despite herself. It was purely a reaction, but damn! The girl talked like a Pezrin. Damn, I said that over the live feed too. Well, let them learn to speak Yaitzny. Well now, she crowed, with a gleam in her eye. Looks like we have a grudge match. It was best to watch the game in their hotel room, while the adults curled up next door. After all, it was the day before their wedding. The chocolate bowl had been strategically deployed, and Melondi was happy to ditch the security teams for a day. A blissful day off after last night, as long as she ignored the bunker teams watching her. No one had mentioned the mint, no interior, no speeches. Just sit back and... Yeah, you haven't changed. Give up now or piss me off and I'll feed you to my sister as leftovers. Well, damn. Fuck me 12 days to New Year's, Kellogg grumbled. Okay. Lark rolled her eyes. Not now, Gumbri. Everyone turned to look at Zinshiki. The girl sat immobile, though her asaic flickered. I am a social influencer. I am a social influencer. Redeploy now! We let laser pumps marines destroy them on station. I want all interceptors to close on fleet. We will tear them to pieces and watch them cry like little children during Victory Award. Rochelle settled back impassively, watching as things played out. Obsidian Syndrome had rattled her niece, and last-moment changes usually just sowed confusion. Mistake 1 and 2. Syndrome had deployed her destroyers with interceptors, and Boo-Weeps had loaded them down with Wild Weasel packages. Something must have tipped Syndrome off to the Consortium's location, because she sent out the signal with moments to spare. The Weasels activated. Of course! Syndrome must have noticed the time delays. Mistake free. At stellar distances, mass and energy signatures were the only ways to detect an enemy. If you were in visual range with an enemy, you were doing it wrong, but the Moonstone-class interceptors were fast. Insanely fast. If Buin's projections about the Consortium's new inertial compensators were correct, the Imperium faced a serious problem. But that was for later. Milk's little brainchild, the Wild Weasels, began screaming, and false ship signatures bloomed across the asteroid field.
Instead of narrowing their plot on the Imperial fleet as they came screaming in, the Moonstone scanners now saw 3, 2 of which were largely fake.
And she's plunging right in. Unless I miss my guess, that's game.
Their interceptors are coming in fast! Too fast! Tickanote cried out over the channel. The transmission delay was down to 2 light seconds when the matches snapped into real time, but Tickanote didn't seem like the kind to rattle easily. Letzi reached for her mic but held herself in check. He would either come through or... They're pulling almost 150% more Excel and turning like they don't even feel it. Tickanote's report continued. They were bearing down on our dropships, but suddenly pulled out, and they're splitting into 3 groups. The information was already 2 seconds old, but the consortium fighters were on the plot. Only a fleet of carriers could deploy like that, but she had most of her fleet in one group, and no matter how fast the consortium ships were, she could mass their point defences. Fleetcom actual, close for cover and bring up PDs. Fast or not, let's build a wall. She'd lose her destroyers, but as for the rest, most of her fleet was massed, able to take out the fighters in detail. They'd be hurt, but they'd survive. Her smile was feral as she looked at her plot. Then we're hunting down and gutting those carriers. They'll be empty. As the day wound toward the evening, Tom Steinberg was struck with a very important question. What's the point? What do I do with the rest of the afternoon? His question was answered when his omnipad went off. It was Jabber. As Tom picked up, he smirked to himself, imagining the kind of numbers preceded by credit signs. The haul from the marina wasn't holding up a mint, but precious metal always moved, and it would be a nice little bonus. What's up, boss? What in the darkest deeps, Tom? I asked you to send Lilu Bagosi a message, not write her a manifesto. Jabber's yell over the line was shrill in his ear, and he winced. I wanted you to scare her, not ruin her life and send her to prison. I'm sorry? The smirk wiped itself off his face, and Tom was rudely dragged back to the present. I needed her for the races, and now she's looking at doing a minimum of 5 years for fraud. Jabber sounded a little mad. That isn't bad enough. You had to open a whole investigation on vice charges too? As she damn well should... Wait, what? Tom put Jabber's call on the back burner and ignored her stream of invective. Patviri, get in here!
What is it?
Calm and collected as usual, also twice as close as he'd expected, though she was buried under the cushions by the couch. Jabber's screaming kept him focused, and he shook the omnipad in his Padawan's direction. Patviri, you were supposed to set a little fire. What the fuck happened? Tom felt like Jackie Chan in Police Story, juggling the phones as he went back and forth from Jabber to Patviri.
I'm sorry?
Came the muffled voice. Without Patviri's little head ticks and tail twitching, Tom hadn't a clue what was going on in her head. She's doing 5 years minimum for fraud, Tom hissed.
And?
Now Patviri sounded confused. Give me a second. I'm gonna go see what actually happened. Tom didn't have an answer for that. He didn't have a lot of answers, so he flipped back over to Jabber. Hey, it's me. I'm back. Sorry, kids in the stove. Anyway, give me a break here and tell me what happened. As Jabber relayed everything that had happened over the course of the day, Tom felt his heart sink again. Patviri had done the job just as she promised. Technically. Really, it was just a matter of degrees. Somewhere online there was a flood of pictures over a stuffed Rokiri, or something on fire. Okay, the whole house burning down, that one is on me. I decided the house had sent a better message and no casualties. Personal touch, am I right? The aquarium, though? I don't know jack about that. I mean, everyone knew it was bullshit, but there's better ways to ruin a business. Come on, Jabber. Would I really murder 3 people in a fish tank to ruin somebody's life? Okay, he left Patviri out of it. It seemed like the thing to do, taking responsibility for the job going, well, not wrong as such, but a little sideways. As for anonymous victims in a seaquarium, he knew that he totally would. Well, if they deserved it. Or were in the way of someone else who deserved it. The problem was, it was already making headlines. That was sloppy, and he didn't do sloppy. Sort of. Usually. Fed to zoo animals seemed imprecise, but there was some flair to it. If it was just done right. He tried to cultivate an air of irresponsibility about himself. The best way to remain in control of a situation was to make it appear as if you had no idea what you were doing. Any other day, the chaos would have been perfect, but right now?
The interior is all over this!
Ah. Well now, that could get a little unpleasant without Adam around. Shucks. That brought a renewed tirade of the Omnipad, and Tom covered the mic with his hand. Patviri hadn't emerged from her pillow fort, but copper eyes regarded him from the shadows. She isn't talking. Of course she isn't talking. Why am I surprised she isn't talking? Tom shook himself and focused on Patviri. Or at least the pillow fort. Listen up, kid. Due to events beyond our control, we're now in trouble with some very powerful people. Ready to do that Pedrin thing some more? Tomorrow. The mound of pillows moved as his students sat up. Surrounded by the remains of the pillow fort, Patviri methodically started brushing out her pelt, as if nothing in the world was the matter. We're going to the wedding. I have a date. The guilty were punished, all right, and it seemed like Tom was about to enjoy the consequences of his actions. Violence was a useful tool, but it was a chainsaw, not a scalpel. It left a mess to deal with. He got back on with Jabber. Sometimes you just had to know when to bluff. So, I'm still getting paid, right? He tried to sound casual. You got what you asked for, or do I need to send you a message? Jabber howled. Damn it, Tom! Trinia set the Omnipad down and pondered the evening. While Camaudra's death had yet to be announced, Laurel was beyond stricken. Grief over his sister would come in time, but right now he was numb. She loved her husband, but his emotional distance was just as well. They had their daughter to think of. Laurel was a good father and wouldn't scare their child. Once Prendy was asleep, there would be time for tears. In the meantime, her husband was calm, which was also useful. There were matters which required attention. If Rovi was in full swing, and they had a duty to be seen. Lingering details surrounding Camaudra's death were being arranged before an announcement the day after tomorrow. Despite herself, she found herself looking forward to tomorrow with real anticipation. Camaudra's demise was timely, but even the palace didn't want the woman spoiling Rovi. The public could mourn when it was convenient. She loved Laurel, and his distress pained her, but there was no sense confusing love and politics. Laurel usually understood these things, and he'd wear a brave face until the palace went public. In the meantime, she was more than Laurel's wife. Her position as Duchess de Seren carried responsibilities of its own. Although, there were times when she could be both. Finishing this conversation would be a relief, but Dame Gelf was a useful woman to know. The woman was an inveterate social climber, and the destruction of the Prillintori Marina was a tragedy. Privately, Trinia didn't consider it such, when there was no loss of life. People mattered. Things mattered, but so much less so. Insurance would cover losses. The stately marina would be rebuilt. Alarming, yes. Tragedy? No. Not that Gelf showed restraint in her superlatives, but she did appreciate the call. No doubt she'd tell her cohorts how the Duchess took a personal interest against such indiscriminate violence. And that had value. Gelf had used the phrase herself. It was quotable. Indiscriminate violence had a nice edge to it. A sense of panic and alarm without being specific. It was useful, and if she had agreed, well, she'd deplored indiscriminate violence and meant every word. Violence was best used as a scalpel, not as a hammer. Guelph was a product of the monarchy, through and through, and reflected all that it created, though not at its best. The imperial system made use of patronage, with nobles striving to cultivate the best and brightest minds. But for every rising star whose shine was burnished, you could find someone who was disaffected. Single-minded women without purpose, frustrated dames who lost out in local elections, ambitious women who spent more money than they properly had, trying to impress by swimming out of their depth. There were always those who felt that they had a right by birth or were of equal skill and aptitude. Those passed over, nurturing the belief they deserved more than life had given them, or that positions of power had been stolen. Their blindness made them petty and malleable. "I don't have what is rightfully mine." There was always some variation, but the gist was the same. Few would say such a thing aloud, but envy was corrosive. "It's not your fault. It's all on someone else's fault, not yours." You stoked their convictions without agreeing. No doubt Guelph nurtured her list of personal slights. Trinia, showing the merest interest, had turned a short call into a half-hour of commiseration. Though nothing explicit had been said, Guelph was effusive in how right-thinking she was. "I'm just as good as she is," they might whimper. It only got worse if the other woman wasn't from the right family, or worse, wasn't even Shilvanti. She had no use for racists, but it was nonsense to dismiss them from the political equation. "No, you're better. No one wants to groom a successor that will surpass them in every way. You were passed over unfairly." Such words were a balm, nurturing their illusions. Targeting the other with small-minded people was a useful strategy, particularly when directed toward the poor, the weak, or the alien. People without the political capital, clout, or cohesion to defend themselves. It was even safe if used with restraint. Now she needed to use those same levers against people who held power, and that was dangerous. People with no political clout were easy targets. Humans would be ideal, but for Adam's marriage, their relative rarity, and the fact they were so dangerous. Still, that could be managed. The human propensity for violence? They were savages, to be shunned by a civilized galaxy. Their custom of a man for only one woman, men walking around shirtless, by nature as well as nurture, it would be easy to turn titillation into cries of pervasion. They would make wonderful scapegoats. Later. For the moment, it was time to galvanize the downtrodden nobility. Useless singly, but even the assembly of nobles would bend to a popular movement. And the assembly itself? Its most influential members were away with the Empress, presenting a priceless opportunity. By the time the Empress came home, her options would be severed, leaving only Loral, beloved son, ever the devoted family man, and known for his kindness. Loral, a devoted husband, a father to his children and the people alike. He would be the perfect Dowager Emperor, and she would be behind him every step of the way. While the option of an emperor would make the assembly hesitate, Loral came replete with an heir and lacked an appetite for power. Their daughter, Prendy, turning 6 soon, and 7 more years would be a short wait for her to reach maturity. Loral would be acceptable until then, and she'd be there to guide him, and supply him more children with Aurelea out of the way. Low-born bitch. No plan was perfect, and she had made one error, and she considered it dispassionately. Satora's death was expedient, and the wellspring of sympathy would buoy public support for Loral, and Camordra's death had been absolutely necessary. She felt no regret in arranging for both, well ahead of time. And then, Calandra's death had opened a
dazzling galaxy of possibilities. Trinia idly rubbed a tusk after setting down her omnipad. Her one mistake was Kalira. If the girl had only stayed in the background. But no, the palace has stepped in. Out in public or not, she was out enough. Still, people grew. Goals evolved. Rising in the interior had been her goal once. Her desire to become minister had been supplanted by access to Laurel. Her assignment as his handler brought them together, and she'd won his love, departed from the interior after their marriage to undertake her hereditary role as Duchess. Laurel was a dutiful prince and easy to love. Retiring, but seldom weak. He was a caring father and a good husband, and she had been content. But then, Calandri died, and assassination was an interpretive art form. Still, the Empress would return. Matters needed to be resolved before she... "Who are you talking to?" Trinia looked up at her husband. Despite his immaculate suit, he looked haggard as he lingered at the door, and her heart went out to him. "Dame Gelf." She waved at her omnipad before rising to take him in her arms. "I wanted to express my concern over the violence in Prelentori. The marina seems a complete loss." "You are so good about that sort of thing, Trinia. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I just don't want to put on an act. Not today, at least." He buried his head against her chest and sighed painfully. "I know it was difficult to love Camordri, but after all this, it just hurts." "I know, but she was a difficult woman," she said soothingly, folding around her husband and rocking him gently. "She was never as kind as I thought she should have been to you or Kalira. I know that doesn't make this easier, but it's still true." "Are you certain attending this wedding tomorrow is right?" Laurel pulled back, looking up at her. "We aren't invited." "From what I've heard, that won't matter. Besides, Professor Warwick has become well acquainted with Adam and very close to Kalira." She stroked an errant hair back into place on his forehead. "Even if you can't talk, it may comfort her to see you. I love you." Laurel moved close and held her again. "You always think of these things. Darling, when I start forgetting things, you can sew me in my coffin and fire me into the sun." She rested her chin on his head and gazed at the sunset. Dead or alive?